Good afternoon. We've got a good group that have already entered today, and we've got a number of other folks that will be joining us. I'm Randy Baltnight, Special Gifts Officer for the Foundation. Um, Mike Worley was not able to be with us. He's out of town, but send his regards to everyone and appreciate your participating in the program. This is our first alumni happy hour get together for the semester. There will be another one next Tuesday that'll feature Dr. Diana DeLocke in reference to microplastics and micro problems. Again, we're delighted to have you here. We've got off to a good start at Lander. We will be completing our second week of classes tomorrow. We had an enrollment of 3,518, which is a little over 9% increase from last year. Now, you folks are all on audio. We've got folks from out of state, Arizona, Massachusetts, so forth. Delighted to have you all with us. Again, we're on audio only, but you may submit questions via the chat box at the end of the program. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Mike Brizek. Dr. Brizek is currently serving as interim dean of the College of Business and has been a faculty member within the college during the past 5 years. Mike earned his PhD in business with an emphasis in strategic management from Virginia Tech, a master's of hotel, restaurant, and tourism administration, and a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of South Carolina. So without further ado, I would like to hand you over to Dr. Michael Brizek. Mike.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baltnight. It's a pleasure to have everybody here. And thank you for joining us for our first happy hour, alumni happy hour of the semester. My name, once again, is Dr. Michael Brizek. I'm the interim dean of the College of Business. Some of you know who I am. And like I said, I've been with Lander since 2015. And previously, I was at several other institutions around the United States in both administrative and faculty capacity. Just a brief, before we get into the study real quick, just a brief little introduction of what's been going on in the College of Business. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that after the study and open it up to any questions about some of the news and events that we've happened over the last year or so. I've been interim dean for the past year. This particular year, as Mr. Baltnight said, Lander University has experienced record-breaking growth. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, we are up about 9% as a university as a whole. College of Business has had a record-breaking year as well, too. The College of Business is up 33% this year versus last year, which equates to about almost close to 200 new students, additional students in our program. The College of Business, with our undergraduate and graduate programs, is now at an all-time high of 657 students. We've never been in the 600s, and we're almost close to the 700s. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that with some of our new programs and some of our strategic initiatives later on. But we got some great things going on in the College of Business at Lander University, and not only to lead in the Piedmont area, but also to lead in the state as well, too. And I'll share some of those news and events with you in just a little bit there. So the purpose of us getting together today is to talk a little bit about a study that I was working on. And the reason why I'm presenting it today is because this particular study did get some traction as far as I was interviewed by the Greenville News and also the Charleston Post and Courier back in May to get additional contemporary information of what's going on as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. This particular study I worked on, actually, I worked in collaboration with two professors from the College of Charleston, And also, they had research assistants assist us with the Tourism and Research Analysis Center that they have down there in Charleston. And so the reason why we picked this particular topic is because restaurant eating and dining establishments are a cornerstone of small businesses, but also are highly susceptible to a situation like a global pandemic or any other type of social event. And so the relationship between the economic impact of what a social event would occur and how it occurs and how it would impact a particular type of restaurant or a segment or industry is quite intriguing to look at. You can look at something like eating and dining places or lodging or whatnot, and kind of get a feel for if there's a major event that occurs, how it could have a major economic impact on that particular situation. Of course, it's no secret that the hospitality and tourism industry is the #1 industry in the state of South Carolina. It's a multi-billion-dollar economic generator and has a multiplier effect across many different industries. As such, it's also the main source of tax revenue for the state of South Carolina, which also makes this an intriguing study to do in that aspect. I did a similar study 20 years ago, basically the effects of post 9/11 and the effects on the industry as well too, which is another major worldwide event that had cataclysmic economic implications. And so this is another type of once in a lifetime event that looks at the impact of this particular situation. So the study itself is basically the independent restaurant operator perspectives in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit with you today, and the results of that study, and also where it's particularly headed right now as far as publication and future implications as such as well. And so basically, as I mentioned before, why we chose this topic is the relationship of having a worldwide event and having also affect economic indicators as well too. And so we looked at basically this because of the timeliness and the impact of what has occurred. And of course, because this is a constantly evolving type of situation as it involves the negative economic and social impacts that this pandemic is providing. And we put it in the context of South Carolina restaurateurs and independent restaurateurs because of the reasons I just gave earlier, due to the economic impact and implications, and also basically how it affects the social interchange between the economy and social interaction, and how it affects overall activity in the state as well too. And so why we chose, again, the restaurant industry is because what we saw with the Bureau of Economic Research, the restaurant industry, of course, is highly susceptible to long-term crisis. In the survey, 72% believe they had a chance of survival if the crisis lasted 1 month. And this is going back from a study in early February that we started to look deeper into with our own study. In the brief survey, they saw that they operators give themselves a 30% chance of survival, and if the crisis lasts more than 6 months, chance of survival shrinks down to 15%. You think about just the dynamics of restaurants; they're built on very small margins. In a normal operational setting, the average profit margin of a normal operating restaurant is between 2 and 5%. Very razor thin margins. They rely heavily on high volume, high sales volume, high operations, and the cost of capital and the cost of variable expenses is so extreme that they really are operating on lower margins. And so when you add in a major event such as this, and you have to decrease your capacity, which has occurred in this aspect, those already razor thin margins become untenable in terms of overall profitability, which if you look at those economic factors, once again, that's another reason why the restaurant industry was such an attractive study to look at, because they have so many different forces going against it in that aspect. And so the way we designed this particular type of study was basically looking at, like we said before, independent restaurateurs in South Carolina. We define independent restaurateurs as basically privately owned restaurants that have fewer than 20 restaurant establishments in the organization itself. And it comes primarily from food and beverages aspects in that aspect. We also looked at independent restaurateurs because studies and literature has shown that an independent restaurateur has even more unique characteristics with it because they have a relatively even smaller error margin. They're not supported by large marketing dollars of large chain restaurants or franchisers. They are not as scalable in terms of the overall sale size of the company or concepts themselves. So they have higher level of challenges in terms of restricted cash flows and ability to remain solvent because of the scalability of the restaurant operations or operations themselves. And so we did this as a mixed method study, and we did it I'll show in a minute, the different tiers we did to try to extract information to learn more about how small business operators are functioning in this particular type of environment itself. And so if we look at the basic research questions, there was 8 underlining research questions that we looked at, both in a quantitative and qualitative type of format, in an actual survey that we distributed, and then follow-up semi-structured questionnaire that we had to a select group of operators themselves. And so if we look at this area, we had the 8 main questions that we looked at was, has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your ability to run your restaurant, independent restaurant operations themselves? We also looked at research question 2, which was, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the services you're able to offer your customers, given the guidelines suggested reducing seating capacity to maintain social distancing itself? Research question number 3 was, do you feel governmental agencies such as the Centers of Disease Control or CDC, South Carolina DHEC, or you, the operator, are the most appropriate entity to manage health and safety practices to protect your staff and customers' welfare? So we looked at the social and regulatory aspects of that question as well too. Number 4 is, how long do you anticipate being able to remain fiscally viable under the current COVID-19 restrictions and guidelines? And I'm going to talk about some of the results of each research question in just a minute. Research question number 5 was, what types of financial assistance would be necessary for your businesses to remain viable under the current COVID-19 conditions? And what we were looking at there was, especially when we started looking at the study, if you remember, the CARES Act was just started, the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, was just starting, and other types of government assistance, both at the local, state, and federal level. And so we were looking at also gauging what was most attractive, but also what were independent operators trying to seek as far as relief was concerned in terms of financial infusion by different governing bodies themselves. And then research question 6 was, if your operations were required to shut down a second time, what is the likelihood of your business being able to continue? And that's going back to that initial survey that was done nationally, looking at overall pessimism as this continues to move on in operating itself. And then research question 7 was, what social conditions help support or hinder your ability to be financially viable during the COVID-19 pandemic? And research number 8 question that we looked at was, what are your perceptions regarding the overall financial ability of the hospitality and tourism industry itself over the next 18 to 24 months because of the COVID-19 pandemic? Because what we were looking to assess was, okay, what's your current situation in your current town? But also what we were looking for is basically, how is your overall outlook of the industry as well too in that aspect? And so we're looking at a smaller scale, a micro scale, and then also a macro level aspect as well too. So like I said before, with the study methodology, this was a conceptual mixed method study, and it was designed to explore the perceptions and attitudes of the South Carolina independent restaurant operators regarding the operational and economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic business. And we looked at it specifically within the spring of 2020, which was basically, we provided a link to a survey. We worked with various chambers of commerce and also tourism boards in South Carolina to help us disseminate and advertise the survey that was going out. We basically targeted 5 major metropolitan areas, which included Greenville, Greenwood area, Columbia, Charleston, which the majority of the respondents hailed from, Myrtle Beach region, and also the Rock Hill region or York County regions as well too. The survey was open to respondents over a 5-week period, so we can gauge a snapshot in time for this particular area. So it was from May 4th to June 8th of 2020 of this year. And then afterwards, as I mentioned, after we collected the survey data, there was a link that was provided by the Visitors Bureaus and Chambers of Commerce to invite the respondents to email actually me directly to allow for myself to do semi-structured interviews to follow up some additional questions and also get some of their qualitative responses and expand on some of the questions to give actual examples to support the research questions themselves, which allowed for this mixed methods type of study as well. So in continuing on, the results of the first part are as such where we're looking at basic raw data here. And so looking at the raw data, during this 5-week period, how many people were still open? It was interesting to note that about 25% of the respondents basically shut down either temporarily or permanently during this period, some with not planning on coming back. The other thing to keep in mind is that due to the short period of time, we received 54 unique responses. But what's important to keep in mind, I'll show this in a future data, of those 54 unique responses, most of them were multiple operators. So we were able to delineate that the 54 unique responses actually represented about 126 individualized operational units with an average revenue base of about $750,000 per unit. And in some cases, the average revenue was between $2 to $3 million of revenue. And so it was a good snapshot. It basically represented about 3% of the independent restaurateur industry in the state of South Carolina, which is representative of it's not a bad percentage considering the short period of time as well too. Number of employees hired back was also very interesting to look at as a raw data. About 34% of the respondents said they could only bring back less than a quarter of their employees at the time. And on the opposite spectrum, only about 28% could bring back almost a full force during that time, which is representative of the scaled operations that had to occur based on the guidelines set forth for social distancing and reduction in operations as well too. Looking at other results, looking at the raw data, it was interesting to look at is if restrictions remain into 2021, what's the likelihood of closure permanently? And over 65% of respondents said if this continues into 2021, the likelihood of remaining financially viable and solvable continues to worsen, and likelihood of closing is almost 2/3 of all operations. What would be the time period to be financially viable? Most indicated that over 47% indicated that they have about 2 to 6 months of operations, and about the other 25% or so said if this lasts more than a year that they would be shutting down. And we're starting to see that also occur as this continues to linger on, that more and more independent restaurateurs are shutting or closing permanently due to the financial restrictions that is occurring. And so this data is interesting because when we started the study in the beginning of the 5-week period, optimism was much higher. But when we started seeing the data roll in throughout the different weeks, we started to see that pessimism increased and the likelihood of staying open continued to decrease as well, which is a natural inclination to see. But it also shows that the prolonged effects of the pandemic allows a typical going concern business to rethink its business model or completely shut down altogether as well. And the other parts of the raw data that we looked at percentage-wise was to support that one research question, to look at what type of financial assistance options are you looking to achieve in your overall ability to stay financially viable and solvent, and also what would you need socially to occur in order to remain financially solvent or viable as such too. So CARES Act related programs, 81% of all respondents said that they were seeking some type of CARES Act relief programs. 54% were looking at some form of tax incentives and corporate tax incentives. 9% was looking at additional private lending. 9% was looking at additional adding equity partnerships or investments. 41% were seeking rent or mortgage relief, and 32% were looking at government product subsidies. And what I mean by that is that, especially in the restaurateurs, looking at commodity or product subsidy relief that would allow for reduction of overall variable costs for them to remain viable as well too. As far as on the social side of things, independent operators are looking at 49% lifting social distancing or distancing guidelines. And if you recall, at the time, there was heavy distancing guidelines in place. When we did this study, remember, most operations were only allowed to do carry out only. Some regions were allowed to do outdoor seating. As you know, that has been eased over the summer months to allow for partial capacity indoors, some bars to be open, and other types of lessening of restrictions to occur, easing of restrictions to occur to allow for a higher level of capacity. But at the time of the study, it was either carry out only or very limited outdoor seating at the time. Return of tourism is important, and this would be natural because the majority of our respondents were in Myrtle Beach area and also in the Charleston area as well too. And also because of the heavily dependent nature of tourism in the state of South Carolina. 81% said increased consumer confidence, supporting local businesses, supporting going out to eat, supporting travel, and supporting disposable income expenditures. Improved unemployment rates was 32%. Another 32% was return of K through 12 and college students. And we can relate to that, of course, right? Here in Greenwood, how much of the local businesses depend on colleges and the influx of having an open campus. The Wall Street Journal recently did an article about the social economic impacts of campus closures, and they did a case study on Washington State University in Pullman and how dependent Pullman, Washington, and surrounding areas is dependent upon operational campuses. When a campus goes fully online, like we've had in several instances, what devastating that effect that it has on a local regional economy in that aspect. We still don't know how the fall season is going to be with everything without college football attendance in a lot of these large stadiums. You think about it, in some of these towns, the stadium capacity is larger than the capacity of the town itself. And so not having those fans come in to tailgate and also come in the stadium, the verdict is still out on what type of economic impact that's going to have on a lot of these major college towns and cities as well too. Lifting the travel restrictions was 39%, and extending payment protection plan loan benefits was 56%, or other tax incentives in that aspect as well too. So it's a combination of both social activity and also financial assistance options that a lot of the individuals are looking for. So let me briefly go over real quick also now research questions and what was supported by the mixed method study as well too. And so research question one, once again, was, has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your ability to efficiently run your independent restaurants? And what we say here is, based on the survey results, the short answer would be yes. Operators' ability to effectively run their restaurants has diminished. About 28% of our respondents have been able to rehire 75% or more of their pre-pandemic staff, but over 77% were not able to. 65% of respondents said that if COVID-19 guidelines remain into the end of 2020, that they would not be able to maintain their operations and would be forced to close. Some of the responses that we also got as far as information was one interviewed restaurant operator indicated in the post-interview areas that their personal outlook regarding the reopening of the business would not be feasible in light of reduced operations from social distancing guidelines because of their fixed costs of the operation. He basically said, another one said he discontinued his restaurant operation after 1 month because of reopening under the current guidelines would not make his business financially viable whatsoever. And so that was one thing to look at there. Research question 2 was, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the services you're able to offer your customers, given that the guidelines are suggesting reducing seating capacity and maintain social distancing? All the survey respondents operated full service indoor seating operations before the pandemic. And after the reopening, only about a 2-month closure, 95% are only offering reduced outdoor dining and carryout because of the time of delivery restrictions were in place, or guidelines were in place that were not allowing indoor seating at the time to meet CDC SC guidelines. But what was also interesting about this is that operators are looking for interesting ways to try to offset this. One of the interesting feedbacks that is part of entrepreneurship and ingenuity is one of the respondents, who was actually in the Myrtle Beach area, their business acquired a food truck and increased off-site catering services. And it allows that to augment the sales of decreased volume of their on-site operations. They did some of the off-site catering to local golf courses and outdoor venues as well too, to try to find ways and new sources of revenue to offset what would be their traditional in-seating revenue as well too. Research question 3 was, do you feel the governmental agencies such as CDC and DHEC or you, the operator, are most appropriate to manage health and safety? What we found was that the results of the survey were surprisingly supportive in favor of CDC and DHEC guidelines. Even though these guidelines are adversely affecting their operations, the operators are still pragmatic and understanding that over 60% favored such measures for the greater good of society. One person said that this is a global health crisis and we're all subject to. Not following the guidelines as a system will only make the situation worse long term. And so a lot of these operators were hoping on people really following through on guidelines and distancing for the greater good, and hoping for the ability to return to some sense of normalcy overall. So kind of counterintuitive to a certain degree, that sometimes people say the regulations affect business operations and hurt business operations. But it was quite interesting to say also that it is for the greater good as well too. And so research question 4 is, how long do you anticipate being able to remain fiscally viable under the current COVID-19 restrictions and guidelines? And this is where places like the Post and Courier and Greenville News really wanted to get that information so they can have it published and talk about during our study, to really get a pulse of what's happening. And like we said before, 65% of the survey respondents said they would likely close their restaurant if it continues into 2021. One interviewee stated, I've already withdrawn from my retirement benefits to cover current monthly fixed costs for my restaurant. If conditions continue or worsen over the next 3 months, I will not have enough revenue coming in to cover these costs, and I'll be forced to close. I'm simply operating under cash reserves at the moment. And that seems to be pretty much the common theme as we see restaurants and operators continue to close, not only in the restaurant segment, but small businesses themselves. They just cannot cover enough revenue to cover their fixed and variable costs moving forward as well too. And then research question 5, what types of financial assistance would be necessary for your businesses to remain viable under current 19 conditions? I pretty much covered that with the raw data and showed you the percentages from different types of incentives that governments offer. Just on the qualitative standpoint, one interview responded by saying that he favors another round of small business low interest stimulus loan that was originally proposed under Senator Tim Scott. He says, I'm unsure, however, if I could ever qualify or gain access to another round of stimulus loans I was unable to obtain in the previous round. And we saw that in the news as well too. The first round of small business stimulus loans, that funding dried up within a 2 weeks period of time. So a lot of people that didn't act on it absolutely immediately were not able to take advantage of that first round of funding, and basically fell behind even further because they were not able to get a hold of some of that process. Also, the ability to apply and seek that funding was confusing to most people as well too, and how to obtain that type of either PPP funding or CARES Act funding for small businesses as well too. If your operations were required to shut down a second time, what's the likelihood of your business being able to continue? And this was also fairly large. Over half the respondents, 58%, said they would not be able to reopen again. If there's a second mandated shutdown to occur, or the COVID-19 situation continues to be escalating as high as it is, the one respondent said, I barely opened when the restrictions were lifted in May due to the initial reopening costs associated with buying new inventory and additional supplies to meet new guidelines. This along with paying back invoices prior to the first shutdown. I also had to pay on my rent and utility bills during the first 2 months of the shutdown, even though I didn't generate any sales. If forced to shut down again, I would not be able to feasibly make it work. And that seems to be a common theme across the board there too. Two more questions here. And so what social conditions would help support or hinder your ability to be financially viable? Also, the raw data showed that as well too. Really, because of the nature of the population being in Myrtle Beach and Charleston, really tourism is the driving factor. So the one person from the Myrtle Beach region said that if we are 90% reliant on tourism traffic every year for our restaurants. This includes seasonal customers along with conventioneers and tour groups. They were able to maintain operations at one of their locations because they were able to support local golf courses in those venues, but that's not enough to sustain the business itself. One thing that was unique about this study is when we were surveying and looking at respondents in smaller areas, some of the local clientele helped keep their businesses afloat. But those that are heavily dependent upon the regional tourism aspects really found, and have multiple units, really found the challenge to be there in terms of the ability to maintain the viability because of such decreased volume in their operations as well too. Research question 8 was, what are your perceptions regarding the overall financial viability if this continues on for the next 18, 20, 24 months due to the pandemic? And basically, the longer this goes, the higher likelihood of the viability. And as I said, we did a time series analysis, and optimism was higher in the beginning of the study versus towards the end of the 45-day study as this continues to drag on. As the pandemic has now dragged on for 7, 8 more months, the optimism continues to wane in the overall financial viability of these operations. One interviewee from the Charleston area said hotel occupancy is down nearly 75% and not likely to rebound anytime soon. Even if social distancing practices go away with the event of a vaccine or something, consumer confidence will still be very slow to return. And they really are hoping for that upstart in the economy as people slowly integrate back into society as well too. We know this from the news also. We see the challenges occur in major metropolitan areas like in California and in New York City areas as well too. Very challenging, very problematic in that aspect. So what are the implications of our results? Basically, as we said, nearly 75% of all the operators have not rehired or staff back upon reopening. This also coincides with unemployment rates, which have gone to historic highs going back to the Great Depression. We went from 3.6% in January of this year to, at the time of the study, 13.3% in May. 2/3 of the study's finding coalesce to suggest additional pandemic business strategies. First, nearly 6% of the surveyed operators said they prefer that governmental agencies help provide safety and guidelines for the greater good. They also said that they need increased consumer confidence in order to be essential for overall economic recovery as well too. 81% of those surveyed also said they are dependent upon or continuously seeking regulatory and also financial assistance in the form of grants and capital infusion in order to offset their variable and fixed costs and keep their overall operation as well too. Basically, taking the pulse of the independent operators and the independent restaurant operators themselves was essential because it looks at the overall health of a larger industry as well too. And dependency, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, between the social aspects of what we do, the economic impact of what that happens, and when you have major disruptions such as this crisis, what that does to not only the social aspect, but the overall economic and health aspect as well too. And just in conclusions, as I mentioned before, this study was cited and also reported upon by the Greenville News. Greenville News actually did 2 articles on this and mentioned College of Charleston and Lander University in the study, and also the research that was being done, which was very timely and provided an insight to basically what's the pulse of what's going on in a real-time basis as well too. And where this goes from here is it's currently under a 3rd review, this particular study, and we're just finishing up the final editing parts of the 3rd review from editors themselves. We hope to have this study published in what's called the International Journal of Hospitality Management. This particular journal itself is a Tier 1 high impact journal. It's the 3rd ranked journal in the discipline in the world. It's a very prestigious journal. This would be one of the highest peer-reviewed journals that would be Lander would be part of as far as a major worldwide study, and the impact of this journal and the discipline itself is quite prestigious. So we're pretty excited about the prospects of that publication. The reviews have been very favorable of the overall paper itself, with some minor editing and clarification and clarifying points. And as I said before, we hope to have this study published as a joint study between Lander University and the College of Charleston for this worldwide peer-reviewed journal as well too. And so before I talk about just some of the other happenings going on with the College of Business itself, I'd like to open it up to any type of questions and answers on the study as well too.
This is Ann Walker. I'm on the phone, and I'm a Lander grad.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious. We have a guy who works in the governor's office who is a Lander grad who actually lives in Greenwood and commutes to Columbia. His name is Sim Singh.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if y'all are aware of that, and if you've made the results of this study available to the governor's office.
That's a great question. We haven't made the results of the study of the governor's office, but we're more than happy to disseminate the published article once it does come to publication to Mr. Singh. I actually did get to meet Mr. Singh last year at the alumni banquet that we had here at Lander.
Okay.
And yes, so I am familiar with him, and I appreciate the call out on that. And yes, we will through media relations at Lander, once this article is published, disseminate it to the different stakeholders involved to let them know that the study was done, and also as an impact to the state of South Carolina. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope that at some point in time, maybe you might make this available to the Board of Trustees at Lander.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we would love to hear from professors like you that are doing these kinds of things. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Do we have any other questions at the time before I give a status update in the College of Business? And I'll also take some questions related to the operations of the College of Business as well too.
Mike, this is not a question. This is Randy. You know, the other impact you mentioned, sports events and the impact on the hometown, but you know, you'll also, it's not that far away for the holiday seasons, which are generally just I'm sure a big income producer for a lot of the restaurants and so forth.
Yeah, and as this continues on, I mean, there's other studies like University of South Carolina. They have a very large college of sport management, and I'm sure they're doing economic impact studies right now based on the economic impact of sports venues and what that creates. I mean, this isn't a secret. It's been in the newspaper for over a month now, but you know, Clemson University is estimating that their overall losses as a university will be hovering around $160 million this year. A lot of that also has to do with the lack of having attendance of their stadium and revenue of that aspect related to that auxiliary revenue from that. And so we know this in business as well, whether we take it from sports or hospitality tourism, or whether we're talking about another industry, we deal with the multiplier effect of economics. And so when you're working with industries that are intertwined with one another, when a major event occurs, it has either a positive or a negative multiplier effect. And that multiplier effect has major economic implications on that aspect. I was actually a professor at the University of South Carolina at the time, and I did a study dealing with Patriots Point and how tourism affects Patriots Point, and also what Patriots Point does in terms of multiplier effect to support other entities economically within the city of Charleston as well too. Previously, I wasn't part of this study, but I remember a study that the University of South Carolina did when they looked at the economic impact of what the Carolina Panthers would bring. If you remember, they were building a stadium at the time back in the mid-90s, and they ended up going up to Clemson. But you know, the multiplier effect of not having Carolina Panthers in Williams-Brice Stadium in Columbia on that Sunday was about an $8 million economic impact net loss per every time the Carolina Panthers didn't come. So we look at these types of economic impact factors all the time, multiplier effect, both positively and negatively, and what it does to a region or area. And this is one example of a study that does that as well too.
We have any other questions from anyone regarding the survey? Mike, feel free to go ahead and discuss some of the things, the College of Business as well, some of the new things.
Yes, yeah. So now I'm going to take the opportunity, thanks for that segue. I'm going to take my professor hat off, my research professor also, and I'm going to put my interim dean hat on now. Right, there we go. And so I like to brag on some of the things that we do in the College of Business, and we have some alumni here. I see on the screen that are business alumni, and welcome. It's good to see, hear and see from some of you again. But despite, I don't want to be doom and gloom in this whole presentation, because despite the COVID-19 pandemic, College of Business, in my opinion, has done more in the last year than probably College of Business has done in 15 years. We've done some outstanding work, a lot of hard work, both faculty and staff. And I want to share some of that with you today if you haven't already heard. And so this year alone, we've pretty much doubled the size of our program offerings in the College of Business. We have introduced about 5 new degree programs this past year alone that went through full CHE approval, Commission of Higher Education approval in the state of South Carolina, and also SAC COC approval, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. And so in our Bachelor of Science degree program, as you know, we've had before, management marketing, which is our largest major, accounting, financial services, and healthcare management. We have now added this year hospitality management, sports management, and information technology management, which is also in partnership with the College of Science and Mathematics and the Computer Science Department, where they're offering the computer systems courses, and we're offering the management courses to have a blended degree program. This is through our advisory boards and also from regional demand that we brought in these degree programs. Another new degree program which we started, which was the Bachelor's of Applied Science degree in Business Administration. Now this program I'm very proud of because we are the first in the nation, basically, and especially in the Southeast, to offer such a program. And what this program is a pathway for degree completion. It's the same courses that we offer in our Bachelor of Science degree program, but we do it in a way that allows people to complete their degree. And what I'm saying is that we are encouraging people from 2-year colleges to come and transfer to Lander University in a fully online program in order to get their stackable business credentials, their 2 years, to receive a bachelor's degree in business program. What's unique about this program in particular is that unlike any other type of applied science degree program in this country, Lander University is accepting all associate degree programs. Let me repeat that. We're accepting all associate degree programs as long as it's coming from a regionally accredited institution. So that means all AA degrees, AS degrees, and AAS degrees. The majority of students in the state of South Carolina take AAS degrees, which are considered terminal in nature because of the technical narrowness of the degree program. These are areas such as HVAC or emergency management or EMT or dental hygiene. We are accepting all of those transfer credits. And as such, we're taking them, we're acknowledging that degree, and we're giving you your bachelor or your business background to give you a business degree. And you can do it wherever you are in the region and do this 100% online. So the people that live in Charleston or York County or Greenville County, wherever you may be, you receive your bachelor, your 2-year degree in whatever field you are, you want to advance your career and skills, and you need that bachelor's degree in business to get you to the next level. You work in that community, you just stay right where you are, and Lander is going to go ahead and get you to where you need to be. I'm excited because when I took this to the Commission of Higher Education back in January, Commissioner Seconder was so impressed by this. She said this is exactly in alignment with Governor McMaster's 2017 Workforce Development Plan. She says, you will take this statewide. I said, yes, ma'am, we will, because we're the first ones in all of our state institutions to do such a thing. And since that time, we developed a further relationship with the South Carolina Technical College system, and we're in the process of signing a memorandum of understanding right now, which should be done by the end of this week. Our parties have signed it. We're waiting for their parties to sign it. They've already agreed to the conditions. This will give us entree to all 16 technical college system students and over 61,000 of those to come and enroll at Lander University upon successful completion of their 2-year degree and complete their bachelor's degree with us. What I'm trying to get at here is that the College of Business has devised a strategy which is aligned with President Constantino's, which is professional career-minded degree programs and educational pathways for that success. We want people statewide and region-wide, because we're going to go into Georgia and other schools as well too with our programs, and we're providing affordability, flexibility, and also accessibility. That is the key. You know, you're always going to have people that like the orange from Clemson and like the football team, and they're going to be Clemson students, that's fine. But we're looking for degree students that are looking for pathways for successful career goals, and Lander University is doing that. We are a comprehensive 4-year regional institution, but also through the College of Business, we're going to be a leader in the state in what we offer our degree programs and what we offer to people. With that also, that includes graduate programs as well too. In the last year, we introduced the Master's of Science of Management degree program. This is a great program because this program also encourages non-business degree students to get their business degree and get it in business management as well too. 40% of our enrollees are non-business undergrads. But in the inception of this degree program in the last year, we have grown 72%. As graduate degree programs nationwide continue to decline, Lander continues to grow in double-digit growth. We graduated our first MSM cohort after 1 single year this past August, and we currently have over 64 students in the program as well too, which makes us the 7th largest major just as a master's degree program in the university as well too. Where is this taking us? We're projecting in the next 2 to 3 years to be a regional and statewide player with our online degree programs, our unique, innovative, new types of programs. We currently have at the Commission of Higher Education a very unique Bachelor of Arts in Entrepreneurship program. We're also working on a 10-month stackable credential professional online MBA program that is unlike any other type of MBA program in the state of South Carolina and also in the region itself. We're thinking differently, we're acting differently, we're being very progressive, and as such, we want other universities and colleges to follow our lead, but we're going to be the leaders in what we do and how we do it. And already, even during this pandemic, the numbers are showing that progressive, steady growth, and we're providing educational opportunities for people that might have not been able to achieve those before throughout the whole state of South Carolina and the region itself. And so that was just kind of give us a little bit of an update of where we're headed. I'd be more than happy to address any questions or answers on our new degree programs, our strategy, and our trajectory in that aspect as well too. Any questions?
I believe.
Mike, this is Ann Walker again. Have you given any thought to the business of nonprofits? Because it's exploding, and there are very few places that give degrees in that.
Yes, we're looking into that. the one nice thing about the MBA program that's being proposed right now and going into, while we're waiting for, we have to go through the Board of Trustees approval first, ma'am. So you'll see that
Yeah,
soon.
I understand.
Yeah, but that's coming. It's coming next week, from my understanding. But once we take it to CHE with these stackable credentials, one of the areas is in organizational leadership and things of that nature. But the way we have the program designed, we have 6 stackable credentials to start off with, which basically means you take your MBA core and then you get to pick 2 of your credentials that you want your micro credentials to be in. And so one of those that we're going to introduce in the future will be a non-for-profit micro-credential that we can add to that area as well too. The other thing just to deal with non-for-profits is the Bachelor of Science degree program in entrepreneurship, which is the undergrad degree program that's going through the Commission of Higher Education right now, is a great, that is a holistic, innovative program. No other program in the state of South Carolina offers what we're going to be offering there. That it was a joint partnership between the College of Business, College of Arts and Humanities, and the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences. And the students, besides their business core background, get to pick various different types of areas that will hone in on their particular skills or what they're looking for. So let's just take non-for-profit, for example. If a student is interested in looking at social entrepreneurship and non-for-profit entities, they take the business core courses, and then they take the one area which is dealing with business and technical writing. And that we have English classes that focus in on actual grant writing and technical writing skills for nonprofits. We actually have those courses in the catalog. They would take those courses and then to hone their perceptual window in terms of looking for opportunities for non-for-profit, they would take sociology courses, psychology courses that deal with the human condition, that allow them to expand upon their ability to serve and understand that condition in order to then create entities to help in that area. So they could customize their educational experience starting next fall in this type of degree program, once we pass the regulatory approvals. And that's what this program was designed for, to look at those different types of avenues and areas, but get that core business background besides as well too.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have any other questions?
Well, as a follow-up also, if anybody has any questions, comments, or suggestions for the College of Business in general, of course, my information is on the website in the College of Business. My email contact is there for anybody to reach out to me at any time, and I'm always available and accessible to anybody to meet with you or to talk to you about anything. I know we're doing social distancing right now, so more than happy to do a phone call or a Zoom call, because I'm here for you as the representative of the College of Business. But I definitely appreciate your time and look forward to some more great things to come with the challenges that we still have in front of us and everything. We're still persevering and moving forward as a college and as the university itself. So thank you for your time this evening.
Dean Brizek, I'd like to thank you for your information and the initiatives that you have going in the College of Business. It's just fantastic for our students, and then with the master's level program as well. Before we end, I would like to thank everyone that's participated. And if you have any suggestions for programs for the alumni happy hours, please let us know. And I do want to remind you again of the happy hour next Tuesday, September 15th, featuring Professor Diana Dulac, microplastics and micro problems. It's a thought-provoking look at better defining where pollution is present in the natural environment and identifying where vulnerabilities may exist. And I've seen Dr. Dulac's presentation before, and it is very informative. It is amazing what is happening in reference to pollution in our waterways, the ocean, and so forth. So unless there's any other questions, again, I thank you for your participation and look forward to seeing some of you next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.